So we have an update when it comes to the status of Sting with AEW and that he's been fully medically cleared to compete. Of course, he is scheduled to compete at Revolution not so long in the future. But AEW President and CEO Tony Khan has confirmed that Sting was recently fully cleared for physical activity with the company. Now, Khan spoke with Mike Johnson, a PW insider, this week and was asked about the concern for Sting over the powerbomb that he took from Brian Cage on last week's edition of AEW Dynamite on TNT. Now, there was a lot of concern for Sting's health as he was forced to retire from WWE after suffering a neck injury at WWE Night of Champions in 2015 in a match against then WWE Champion Seth Rollins. Now, Khan has since confirmed that Sting has been fully medically cleared to wrestle and he's been training with TNT Champion Darby Allin. Khan also said that the Stinger, who turns 62, yes, 62, next month, has used the powerbomb during training with his sparring partners to help get ready for his upcoming return match. Khan revealed that he's the one who called for Sting to take the powerbomb. He said, quote, "He's been cleared, he's been fully cleared, he's been training with Darby and sparring partners, and he's been fully cleared to wrestle. In his training, one thing he's done to get ready with his sparring partners is a powerbomb. In terms of getting ready for this, I was more than fine with it and in fact called it. At the point he was taking them in training, it's time for the live crowd, so he was completely cleared to do it and wanted to do it, and he wanted to get out there and wrestle. Sting is going to be on Dynamite tomorrow, which of course we saw this week. Looking for payback and all bets are off now. Sting's cleared to wrestle and he wants to wrestle, and this is now how he wanted to end his wrestling career in ring, was in AEW, and come in and go out the way he's always wanted to go out, with great matches." Now, as I mentioned, Sting's return match will take place at AEW Revolution on pay-per-view on March 7th, and he and Darby Allin, the TNT champion, will face Brian Cage and Ricky Starks of Team Taz in a street fight. Khan said he expects Sting to have a great performance at Revolution. Khan also mentioned how Sting has very high expectations for the match and added that the powerbomb from Cage did not take a lot out of him. He said, quote, "He's been preparing for this and I expect Sting to have a great performance on March 7th. He has very high expectations and has come back here, and I do too. I thought Brian did a great job with the powerbomb and certainly got people talking about the match in a very positive way, don't know about that, and created conversation about it. Is Sting going to be okay? Is this all right?" Well, that was the idea. We were trying to create the conversation, but most important thing is that he is okay and he walked through the curtain. That's not going to be an easy moment. It took a lot out of him, but at the same time he came out of it in one piece, and that's what he wanted. So there you go. I suppose that, I don't know if it necessarily ends the conversation when it comes to Sting and if he should or shouldn't be wrestling inside of an AEW ring. Tony Khan said he's been fully cleared to compete. I think it's interesting. Again, look, I'm not going to be one of those massive conspiracy theorists and say that, oh, he's lying and all this kind of stuff. Obviously, I think it's very obvious that AEW has a very good medical team there, very good medical staff. I think they have different thresholds and standards to WWE. I think that's obvious at this point. But I also think that, as I've mentioned before, when it comes to Edge and other people, Daniel Bryan, that have been forced to retire and since come back to pro wrestling, that medical science changes and it evolves every single day, every single month, every single year. So what was previously unclearable a couple of years ago when it comes to neck injuries and stuff like that is perfectly fine a couple of years later. Why? Because medical science catches up. There are different ways to rehabilitate yourself. Sometimes with these injuries, they just don't know how long it takes to recover. On the case of Edge, it took 10 years. It wasn't a case of, at the time rather, they felt that he was never going to be able to return. But after 10 years of recovery, they realized actually he's okay. And not to say, I don't know if it's the same with Sting. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that one. I still have massive reservations. I think even if Sting was the healthiest of healthy competitors, the fact that he is 62 years of age next month is a massive concern for him to be appearing in the ring. Why? Because we've seen instances in the past of older wrestlers who do wrestle into their late 50s, early 60s, and there have been massive problems with it. One example is Jerry the King Lawler. That kind of age limit that WWE put on people performing was because of Jerry the King Lawler. Jerry the King Lawler passed all of his physicals. Every time he wrestled for WWE, every year when he had his physicals done, his blood work, whatever they test, he passed with flying colours. Jerry the King Lawler is a very healthy person. Even now, he's cleared to wrestle by a lot of companies, not by WWE because they have a bit of an age limit. But Jerry the King Lawler is cleared to compare by a variety of companies. He wrestles in the independent scene all the time. But because of his age and because of what happened in that match of Dolph Ziggler, the elbows to the chest and all that kind of stuff, he had a heart attack. He nearly died. In fact, he did die, and he came back to life thanks to the doctors and medical staff, one being the doctor that actually works for AEW right now. And I think that is just always a concern for me, is that anyone stepping into the ring in their late 50s, especially into their early 60s, like Sting, as I mentioned, even if they were the healthiest of healthy competitors, would be a worry for me. And on top of that, Sting is not, he isn't necessarily a super healthy 62-year-old. I mean, I think he looks great for 62, don't get me wrong, but this is still a guy that is 62 years of age and has significant trauma on his body. This is someone that's been wrestling since the 80s at this point. We're talking 30 years of wrestling in a pro wrestling ring. We're talking 30 years of injuries, and the last one was such a significant injury that he lost feeling in his arms and legs for a period of time. He took 2 buckle bombs. He could barely finish the match. He could barely walk afterwards. And the doctors that he spoke to afterwards said, you were inches away from catastrophe. I mean, you really were inches away. And by catastrophe, not only does he mean paralysis, but he also means death and all that kind of stuff. We've seen the documentaries. I mean, most people, I guess if you're watching this video, most people saw the match that he had with Seth Rollins back in 2015. It was scary to watch. It was really scary to watch. And I understand what Tony Khan is saying through this, but he's saying, well, when he took the powerbomb from Brian Cage, that was the point. We wanted to create that terror and that fear, and I understand that pro wrestling is emotion, and I understand that pro wrestling is at its best when it makes you feel and it makes you react. I understand that, but the reason we're reacting and we're feeling there is because legitimately there is a fear that he could be paralyzed, and I don't want to see anyone get paralyzed or even worse for the sake of my pro wrestling entertainment. I love pro wrestling. I think we all do. If you're watching this video, if you're subscribed to this channel, you love pro wrestling, or you certainly enjoy it. And I don't know, I would have felt a bit more, and again, it's not about me, but I would have felt a bit more content if when Tony Khan is saying that he's been fully medically cleared, what does that mean? What does that entail? I would really prefer it if it's not a case of, yeah, he's been fully medically cleared. Well, what does that even mean? What does that mean? Can you tell me the issues that are going on with his neck and all that kind of stuff? And I know that might sound a bit hypocritical, because I'm the first person that on this channel always says when it comes to private medical conditions, they're just that, they're private. And ultimately, it's up to the performer and the individual. It's their discretion if they wish to share that information publicly. I just think, given the circumstances here, a little bit more transparency might be the right thing here. When we were talking about someone not getting paralyzed, it's not as if we're talking about a long-term chronic illness or anything like that. We're talking about, as a fan, being comfortable watching it, and it kind of goes past entertainment, frankly. It goes past of, I mean, am I uncomfortable here because they're beating up an old man versus am I uncomfortable because I think this guy's going to not be able to walk after the match? I understand, as I mentioned, it will play into the emotion of the match. It certainly will. I think it's interesting that this whole idea of Sting being cleared to compete feels relatively recent to me, because the indications that we've always got from Sting in the interviews that he did on the AEW Unrestricted podcast versus the reports we heard about Sting when he was talking to WWE was that he wanted to do cinematic matches. He felt that he could do cinematic matches when they limited the bumps he took, when he had a lot of caution around him, when it was more kind of stunt work as opposed to actual taking the bumps in the middle of a pro wrestling match in front of a live crowd. He wanted to have a cinematic match against The Undertaker in WWE. When he spoke to Tony Khan about coming into AEW, he spoke about having cinematic matches in AEW. And it kind of feels like over the course of the last 3 or 4 weeks or so, that whole cinematic vibe has kind of changed, and it's kind of turned into Sting's going to wrestle like he always did. He's going to wrestle by taking bumps in the ring, taking power bombs in the ring, and taking crazy bumps. And to me, that just feels, I don't know. And it's difficult to say, isn't it? Because, I mean, who are we to say that, oh, I don't believe what Tony Khan says. I don't trust the AEW medical team. Frankly, I always say this with stuff like this. They're a medical expert. I'm not. I don't know if you are, if you're watching, if you're not, but I would assume that you're probably not. We're not medical experts, so we don't know. We don't know if the AEW doctors and the AEW medical team think the Sting can go out there without hurting himself, without compromising himself, and frankly, the other people in the ring as well. That's also something to think about too. Then good for them. Then I guess we have to trust them. I don't know. I don't. Again, I just don't know if I feel truly comfortable. I mean, the powerbomb that they did a couple of weeks ago with Brian Cage and Sting certainly did its job. I mean, talk about Sting and powerbombs. What is it with Sting and powerbombs at this point? Because what essentially ended his career in WWE was 2 powerbombs. It was, I know they were buckle bombs, but it's a variation of the power bomb. It was 2 buckle bombs by Seth Rollins to Sting. The first one sent shockwaves through his arms and legs. He was a bit surprised by that, but he could still move. And obviously, we know what happened after the second one. He couldn't stand up. He was finished. He was done. So it's interesting that they're making a statement by straight away going straight for the powerbomb once again when it comes to Brian Cage. And look, Brian Cage, I think he delivered it expertly, and I don't think he delivered it dangerously or anything of that nature. But he didn't hold back. He really didn't hold back, and it was surprising. It was really surprising. Again, when it comes to the Sting thing, and I've done a couple of videos talking about Sting at this point, so I'm not changing my opinion. There isn't any real new information, I suppose, when it comes to Sting. I just don't know how comfortable I am watching it, you know. Is it an attraction? Absolutely. Of course, having Sting, he is a legend, he is an icon, he is one of the most recognizable names in pro wrestling history, WCW, TNT history. Having Sting be back on the pro wrestling show that's on TNT seems like a given, and it seems like it's such a natural fit, and it's such a wise business choice for AEW. Talk about the branding and the licensing and all that kind of stuff as well. It's a natural fit, and it feels like the right decision and a smart decision by AEW. When it comes to the wrestling side of things, though, as I mentioned, even if Sting was completely healthy, I would say still 62 years of age, it's beyond pushing it. It really is beyond pushing it. And I don't know, I've just, throughout my time of being a pro wrestling fan, and I've been a pro wrestling fan for, nearly 20 years at this point, I've seen so many sort of old timers, if you want to call them that, come back and either get hurt or not look their best or whatever. And I don't know about you, I'm just kind of done with seeing that at the moment. And it is a concern, but look, Sting's going to do what Sting's going to do. AEW feel, and Tony Khan feels that he's more than capable of doing that. I'm sure with the likes of Brian Cage, Ricky Starks, and Darby Allin in there, it will certainly help them. And let's be honest, I mean, this is a massive opportunity for them. You're talking about 3 stars that haven't been with the WWE, really. They haven't been with the WWE on the main roster or anything like that. Is it Sting going to be making these 3 stars? I don't know. It certainly does help elevate them to another level, and I think that's what AEW and Sting wanted to do when he came in for these last few years of his career. So, I mean, I don't know. This is, again, the interesting thing, I suppose, when it comes to Sting is how long is he going to do this for? I know he signed a multi-year deal with AEW, but he's 62 next month. When's he going to wrestle to? Until he's 65? I mean, that's crazy. I mean, that's ludicrous, right? I mean, I don't know. There just seems so many unanswered questions when it comes to Sting, and maybe that's the way that AEW have intended this to go. I mean, we can't rule that out as well. Maybe that's the way that AEW want to do this. Maybe this is the way that AEW want to present Sting going forward, is that we don't know as a smart fan. We don't know what's the situation with Sting's neck. We don't know the situation about Sting's health. We don't know how many matches he has left in him. We don't know if it's going to be a proper match or a cinematic match. Maybe that's the way to hook the fans in 2021, is that pretty much most fans at this point, most fans watching at home, especially the AEW fan base, they're a smart fan. So how do you work the smart fan? You work smart, and you work into legitimate concerns about the neck, about whether it's going to be a real match or a cinematic match. Maybe that's the way to do it. You work that he's maybe too old, all that kind of stuff. I don't know. Just as a fan, as I mentioned, I'm still not going to be totally comfortable with it. I think I'll probably be more comfortable coming out of Revolution to see the performance and see that if he's okay and he's fine, then maybe it as a fan makes you feel more comfortable. You just have to remember that the last time we saw this guy have a match, he barely walked out, and then he spent a couple of years telling us about how doctors told him he was this far away from catastrophe and could have broken his neck and possibly even worse, paralyzed or even died. So forgive me for being a bit cautious when it comes to this, but I mean, Revolution is not so many days away, and I'm sure we'll find out more as we head into there. But of course, as always, it's just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on Sting being fully cleared to wrestle for AEW and Tony Khan calling the powerbomb spot last week with Brian Cage on Dynamite? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about AEW, Impact Wrestling, WWE, New Japan Pro Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community, drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. following. Really does help us out here on YouTube, go up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or have you come across this video today, and I'll speak for you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.